be here with you. Listen, before I go into my prepared remarks this morning, I want to take a moment and congratulate the United States military and our intelligence community and President Obama for sticking with the government's longstanding and aggressive anti-terror policies for getting another key terrorist, international terrorist, I might add, and, the death of this American-raised al-Qaeda leader, Anwar al-Awlaki. You think about it, 10 years after our brave men and women of our military and intelligence, they continue to take the fight to those that would do harm to our country, and again, I just salute them. This man that they removed from doing any further harm, al-Awlaki, was the next generation of al-Qaeda who they spread their message of violence using the internet in particular. His death will be quite a serious setback for that organization. He was instrumental in the radicalization of Major Nidal Hassan. If you'll recall, that was the Fort Hood shooter, and he was also very instrumental in other domestic terrorists who he's influenced with his just hate of our country. And so using our resources and our young men and women of the military and our intelligence and the administration, I want to say thank you to them for helping to keep America safe. I'm really pleased to be here with you today, and over the next several weeks I'm going to be laying out a very detailed and important public policy initiatives to get America working again. That is probably the single most important issue that we face as a country. But I want to spend a few moments this morning just updating you on the state of the nation and this critical race for the White House. It's very enjoyable for me to come into Georgia. Kelly, you kind of you busted me a little bit. My wife said, do not go to Georgia and say anything that could be in the least bit controversial. And I was going to promise that I wasn't going to say a word about the Aggies coming into the SEC. But anyway, I do want to commend the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, your president, Kelly McCutcheon, for taking such a proactive role in developing this research-based conservative public policy. What we're seeing in America today is a conservative awakening. It's a revival that's born out of a very deep concern that liberals have used the machinery of the federal government to impose a nanny state that limits our freedoms and it targets free enterprise. Americans are tired of this command and control government from central planners in Washington, and they're tired of the empty promises that we hear about creating jobs and cutting the deficit. We were promised a stimulus plan that would create 3.5 million jobs. But the harsh reality is that we've lost 2.5 million jobs. We were told by then candidate Obama that previous deficits were unpatriotic. But since then, he's doubled them. Now the president is offering a stimulus program. Actually, it's a second round of massive spending, cloaked as a stimulus program, expecting better results with the same strategy. But we know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing all over again and expecting a different result. You don't stimulate the economy by growing the bureaucracy. You stimulate the economy by growing the take-home pay of American workers and American enterprise. What this economy needs at this moment is investor confidence. But employers are smart enough to know that temporary tax relief paid for with permanent tax hikes is not going to lead to greater economic certainty, but instead it's going to lead to a greater and more permanent bureaucracy that, quote, spreads the wealth. Employers know that the promise of temporary tax relief does nothing to relieve the growing regulatory burden of this administration's policies. In 2010, the Obama administration implemented 43 new regulations that cost businesses more than $26 billion. The story came out just this last week that a major American company, the chief executive officer of that company, said he finds it easier to do work in China than in the United States. Now think about that for a moment. When a communist country has less bureaucratic red tape than America, we might just be on the wrong track. The problem we confront today is that Washington is broken. 1 in 6 work-eligible Americans cannot find a job. 45 million Americans are on food stamps. Our credit's been downgraded, and our debt has exploded. It is time for a change. And I'm not talking about the rhetoric of change. I'm talking about a record of change. And I believe I happen to have that record. My home state, since June of 2009, created 40% of the new jobs in America since June of 2009. And I might add, during that period of time, our credit rating actually went up. As governor, I've led on with a few but simple guiding principles. One is don't spend all the money. Have fiscal restraint in how you deal with the issues in your state. Keep your taxes low. Kelly, a personal income tax of 0 is good. Zero is good, unless you're talking about job creation. But 0 personal income tax is very good. You keep your regulatory climate fair and predictable, and a legal system that does not allow for oversuing, which in turn helps to truly create real and permanent jobs. In 2003, we were hemorrhaging doctors across the state. People who practice medicine were leaving the state of Texas, or they were leaving those high-risk practices. So we put forward tort reform that included $250,000 caps on non-economic damages and medical liability suits. And the result of that is that now, some 7+ years later, there are more than 23,000 doctors who are licensed to practice medicine in the state of Texas. Pregnant women have better access to OBGYNs. People in need of trauma care now have better access to neurosurgeons, other specialists. That's what tort reform was really all about how to give better access to the people of my home state. We need to spread lawsuit reform across all economic sectors in this country. And one of the things that we did that I think is most interesting, that could even work at the federal level in those federal courts, is in Texas, in a class action lawsuit, if the plaintiffs are paid in coupons, then we think it only fair and equitable that the lawyers are paid with coupons as well. And just this last session of the legislature, we passed a new loser pay law to further clamp down on those frivolous lawsuits. You know, eliminating the hidden tax that's posed by lawsuit and lawsuit reform is very critical to economic growth. And perhaps nothing could do more to give employers certainty, though, than to stop the mad dash to these federal regulations we're having that kill jobs in America today. I'm not sure that there's anything that is more detrimental to job creation and certainly the confidence of the small businessmen and women across this country than the onslaught of regulations that's coming from this administration. And if President Obama is serious, if he is serious about improving the job climate in this country, he will do more than just intervene in a few EPA regulations. What he should do is freeze all proposed federal regulations for 6 months, starting today. If he's really serious about giving confidence to this country, if the president wants to get America working again, he'll junk this maze of new regulations and the agencies and the programs that have been created under Obamacare. You know, as Republican voters decide who's going to be best suited for this country and to take it in a new direction by stopping the spending spree and the scraping of Obamacare, I'm confident that we're going to choose a nominee that has governed with conservative principles, not one whose health care policies paved the way for Obamacare, a path that blazed this world with higher premiums and with the loss of thousands of jobs. I've got a lengthy record, and sometimes it ruffles people's feathers. But sometimes you have to shake up the system. Sometimes you have to look the people in the face and say, here's what's broken, and here is the solution for getting that problem fixed. And here's the way to get America back on track. And I'm not running from my record. Take the issue of environmental policy. In Texas, we've cleaned up the air while creating jobs and adding millions to the population of my home state. Another state, Massachusetts, was one of the first states to implement its own cap and trade program, which included limits on carbon emissions for power plants. The former executive officer of the Environmental Affairs in Massachusetts today oversees air quality for President Obama's administration. A Harvard professor who helped draft carbon reduction rules in Massachusetts is today the science czar for President Obama. And I knew when I got into this race that I'd have my hands full fighting President Obama's big government agenda. I just didn't think it would be in the Republican primary. You know, Americans are clamoring. They're clamoring for a reset button. And they don't want more of the same. They want a new direction. And the fact is, we don't have to settle for our current circumstances. We'll get to doing what we do as Americans. We will change the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We'll roll up our sleeves and we'll get America working again. Before I walk off the stage, I want to make you two promises. One, my first day in office, when I walk into the Oval Office, I'll take out probably a Sharpie and sign my name to an executive order that will wipe out as much of Obamacare as I can. And number two, every day, I will try to make Washington, D.C. as inconsequential in your life as I can. God bless you. Thank you all for letting me come back.